Can somebody also make me co-host so I can share my screen, please?
I'll do that now.
Thank you.
We're now streaming. You're good to go now, Ian.
Can somebody also make me co-host?
What was that?
You're good to go.
Oh, right. Thank you. Right. Good evening. This is the Planning Consultative Committee. And we'll start now, if we may. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
I've not received any, no.
Right. I think we're missing Victoria, are we?
We are, and Councillor Frodczyk.
And Bill Dowling.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest on items on the agenda. May I inform members that additional chairman's actions forwarded onto this committee an application involving the Lench Meadow, so some may consider a declaration of an involvement with the Riverside project. So do I have any declarations? Councillor Jackson?
Yes, as a trustee of the Town Trust, I've got a clear conflict of interest. So when that item comes forward, I'll just withdraw from any debate and not vote.
Thank you. Councillor Curtis, did you?
Thank you, Chair. Well, just that I think we've probably all had the email from Friends of Fisherman's Walk, which I've read, but obviously just declaring that I think we're all in the same position there, Chair.
Yes, I'm aware of that. I have to admit I haven't had time to read them myself. I've been doing other things. Councillor Fradgley?
Several communications from members of the public re the Lenches over a period of time.
As well as today's?
As well as today's, which I haven't as yet read because I haven't had time yet.
Right, thank you. Item 3 on the agenda, to receive written requests for dispensation for disclosable pecuniary interests. We have none. Item 4, to grant any requests. Item 5, consultation presentation on pre-planning. Well, there are no pre-planning. Item 6, public participation. We do not have any members of the public who've registered to speak. Item 7, to approve the draft open minutes of the PCC meeting held on the 22nd of June. Do I have your agreement to those minutes?
Chair.
Councillor Curtis?
Yes, just a small thing, if I may, Chair. I just wonder, in minutes 18 and 21, should the minutes note the names of the members, councillors making the comments? It just noticed it said a councillor said a councillor. I think it would be more helpful if the names of the councillors should be there, unless there's a good reason why not.
As a practice, councillor, we do not put councillors' names on those kind of documents. You will find that happening throughout all the other committees. I think it's something you probably need to take up with the town clerk.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So do I have your approval for the minutes of the 22nd of June?
Yeah, happy to approve.
Okay, right, thank you. Item 8.1 in fact, list of planning applications deferred from chairman's actions. There were none. There was one deferred from additional chairman's actions yesterday, which is 21-02228, land known as Lench Meadow, Warwick Road, and the ward councillors are the Mayor and Councillor Coles. So I'd like to now call upon Neil to do a presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
Just share my screen, so hopefully you can see that. Right. This is a scheme on land known as the Lench Meadow Warwick Road. The description of the development is effectively for a change of use of land to form increased area of public open space, and works to include an extension to the Fisherman's Car Park with associated access improvements, extension to the existing skateboard park, pedestrian and cycle paths, a collection of ponds, swales, earthworks, riverbank regrading, and shelters and other structures, platforms, boardwalks, and planting. So a whole collection of different things. I have to say this is one of the most challenging presentations because the plan is so enormous. To get these on a slide has been quite challenging. So there's your red line application site. So this is the I think it's called the Bancroft Garden or something. It's by the marina and the Clopton Bridge. So that's the sort of southern tip, if you like. So the leisure centre is in here, and that's the tennis courts, and that's the existing skate park in here. This is the existing leisure centre car park in here, and obviously that's the Warwick Road stretching up there. So it goes as far as the caravan park as well. So a very large area. So flanking the red line, if you follow the arrow, here is the River Avon. As I say, the Warwick Road is flanking on the other side here. So that gives you your bearings, hopefully, and the extent of the application site. So this is the aerial photo. So again, you've got the Clopton Bridge down here, and you've got the marina in here, and that's the sort of Bancroft Garden in there. And this is the application site effectively in here, and it stretches up as far as here. So this field is excluded. That's the red line site. So you can see the caravan park here. So it stretches all the way down here. That's the car park for the leisure centre. You can just see the leisure centre, tennis courts and football pitches in here, and the coach park here. So hopefully that's the bearings. So I'll talk you through the proposals, highlighting some of the key areas. There's obviously a lot of information in here. A lot of it's fairly minor, regrading, planting the reed beds, that sort of thing. But obviously the big issues, I suppose, are the area. I think I described it as it's actually Bridgefoot Park. Beg your pardon, not Bancroft Gardens. I got that completely wrong, so I apologise. That's what they've called it, Bridgefoot Park. That's in here. So you've got the marina next to it here. So this is going to be revamped with existing footpaths being widened and resurfacing, new hedges to improve the sense of enclosure. So you've got various different parts along here. Another key aspect is I'll just show you the park. That's the zoomed in picture of the Bridgefoot Park with the new widened paths, etc. And there's new benches going in. There's so much information here, it's going to be difficult to explain it all, but there's some lots of information in terms of new planting and structures and bins and seating areas and paths and sculptures and things like that. One of the key elements is to remove the old concrete bridge and put up a new timber bridge, which looks like that. That's a cross section of the bridge. And that's in there, I think, over the area called the Swannery. If I just zip back to the first plan, the bridge is going in here, which will allow that connection up the way through the riverside park, etc. This is the middle section of the proposed layout, which principally just shows the areas of new reed bed planting in here. These orange lines are all to do with the contours, new ponds going in here. That's the river frontage there. One of the key parts of this proposal is also a new entranceway or improved entranceway from the car park of the leisure centre, which you can just see white here. And that's a zoomed in version of that. With a new information board with a map, new hedgerows, new oak planting, and a new archway over the top of the entrance as well. Couldn't find the details of the archway, to be fair. It might be buried in there. There's, as I say, a lot of information, a lot of detail. This is just some examples, cross sections of the reed beds and the planting and the boardwalks, etc. Throughout the scheme. Lots of planting, lots of biodiversity enhancement, all backed up with reams of survey work from a wildlife perspective, including otter surveys and things like that as well. A very, very well thought out scheme and detailed scheme. So this is the top section. So this is the Warwick Road along here. This is the existing fisherman's car park in here. So another key aspect is a formalisation of this area, improved access, 71 additional parking spaces on a sort of a grasscrete style surface, so it looked fairly green, obviously permeable. 48 spaces at the moment in the car park area, shaded grey. There's going to be a new barrier, a new bespoke arch that will replace that metal gantry or barrier to the car park as well. There's also in this area down here a new toilet facility for the public, on a sort of and sort of picnic benches and outdoor seating and things like that. New fishing ped and a new pontoon that you can go on to as well and get close to the river. So a lot more capacity there. That's the building itself. It's timber clad, simple cedar grass roof. It's just a simple toilet block basically. That's sort of the pontoon, and there's also a bird hide and shelter as well, facing the river and the I was going to say estuary, but the river where it widens out there. That's just the elevations of that, and that's a cross section of that. So I mean, there's so much going on, it's difficult to summarize it all, but I think you probably get the impression of what it's proposing. In terms of planning policies, there's a few that are relevant in the neighbourhood plan. This area is designated as a local wildlife site in policy NE1. It's also under policy NE2, the River Avon Biodiversity Corridor. And it's also a designated local green space under policy CLW2. Having read those policies and understood the concepts that are proposed here, I would probably suggest, without putting words in your mouth, that this is aligned with what the intention of those policies is. In other words, to ensure that flood alleviation isn't affected in any way, to enhance biodiversity, accessibility, and the use of that sort of space as part of green infrastructure and a usable open space. Whereas I know parts of it are usable at the moment, but a lot of it obviously isn't accessible. And this proposal with various paths and boardwalks and things like that will make it obviously far more accessible. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Neil. Right, councillors, could I invite any asking Neil anything that you need to know further, just for clarification? Councillor Fradgley.
Thank you, Chair. Neil, when you talked about the Bridgefoot Park, is that the piece of land in front of the hotel, or is it to the side of the hotel?
My understanding is it's the piece of land that's in, well, it depends. I suppose it depends what you're calling the front of the hotel. Let me bring the plan up again, and I'll zoom in a bit more.
It's not the bit of land between the road and the hotel, is it?
I believe it is, yeah. So if you look at this here, I can probably enlarge this to zoom it. So this area here, this cross, I believe, is the existing alignment of the path. So that's Bridgefoot there, the car park.
Yeah.
That's the hotel. And you've got the car park to the hotel in here. And that is the Clopton Bridge there. So that's part of the gyratory effectively there.
So can I actually ask, is there a cycle facility across that piece of land there? Because at the moment, I don't believe I cycle across it to get to the leisure centre, but I don't believe that it is a formal cycle path.
Well, they're widening. This is the existing, this is the proposal for Bridgefoot Park. My understanding is that path there, which is the grey path, is an existing path, and it's this path here that's labelled number 3 that's being widened to 3 metres, and I would suggest 3 metres is sufficient to have a combined footway cycle path.
That's not the cycle path that you use from the bridge to get to the leisure centre. That is the blue path. Widening that path doesn't actually help cyclists going to the leisure centre. Just a point. I need to think about that one. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. Neil, I think on the original plans, there was a proposal to have some sort of cafe put in by the Fisherman's Car Park. Has that now gone, or is it in there still? Do you know?
Yeah, there is an area of hard standing that's proposed for what they've described as a sort of a mobile catering van, I suppose, to sort of park there. So there isn't a permanent building, but there is space for somebody to put, it's some sort of catering van or coffee van or something like that, presumably licensed separately. I'll try and find the Fisherman's Car Park plan and show you and see if it's actually shown on there in any detail. I'm not even sure I know where it is. Let me just zoom in and see if I can find it on the... Bear with me 1 second, sorry.
Oh, thanks.
It's number, right, so number, space for mobile catering van, it's called. And it's number 6 on this plan. If I show you again, 1 second. I'm taking it off screen share so that people can get back to there. All right, there we go. So there's number 6 on the plan. So that's the permanent toilet building. And this is sort of a paved area in here. And they're suggesting the mobile catering van, it might be an ice cream van, it might be van selling coffee, whatever it might be, would park effectively in here in this area. Obviously, it has to be accessible from the car park, so it would just simply be stationed on there. So yeah, there is provision for that to come forward as a possibility, but there's no permanent sort of cafe as such.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Right, any other points of clarification? Councillor Fradgley?
Can I just check that the extra car parking space is not open all the time? That is for summer use, so it won't be there all year round, was my understanding.
I don't know the answer to that question, Councillor Fradgley. It might be buried in the reams of supporting text, but I suppose as a material planning consideration, why would you want to restrict the car park to summertime only? I don't know if it's restricted to summertime only at the moment. I mean, it's almost a park and stride kind of facility, isn't it? I mean, I've got a relative that lives in Warwick that goes to Stratford regularly, and she always parks in the Fisherman's Car Park and walks along, even if it's drizzling with rain. And she's actually seen otters on the car park, on the path as well. And I don't think she's alone in doing that. So I don't know why you would want to artificially close that if there's any benefits in that. I mean, if it's a concern, you can certainly raise it, but there would need to be good reason to give it that restriction, I suppose. I mean, it's not near any residential properties as such. If it alleviates some congestion in the town, then that's probably a good thing in my book.
Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Chair. So just in terms of process, I note that the application is a joint one made by District Council and the Town Trust. Can you just explain how that will be dealt with in a planning context, being it's an application from the local authority to the local authority to determine?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and one that's always got me scratching my head in the past. But the planning authority is obviously a co-applicant, but that does not stop the planning authority granting itself planning permission. And you've seen applications in the past that have been submitted by the district council and they've granted consent. In terms of transparency, those sorts of applications would always go to the planning committee at the district council, so they wouldn't delegate, approve one of their own applications, even if it was very minor. And I think the last one I can recall, I think they maybe did some refurbishments to one of the public conveniences in the town, and it was very, very minor, but that still had to go through the planning committee process, so there was full transparency. And I know obviously the town trust, many of you are also town trust members, you've declared your interests, etc. But it's just one of those quirks that the planning authority can grant itself planning permission.
Councillor Curtis, another point of clarification?
Yes, it is, Chair. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, Neil, would you mind just showing us again? You mentioned that there's going to be better access from the leisure centre car park into the Meadows area or somewhere. Would you mind just bringing that back up again, please?
Yep, certainly. So if I show you this slide first, so that's the leisure centre car park. That's the extreme sort of northeast corner, if you like.
Yeah.
This is the coach car park area in here. The skate park extension is down here. So these are all sort of swales and other bits and pieces and contours and mown paths and things like that. So this is I think a new, or certainly if you can get access into this land here at the moment, this is certainly an enhanced area, and that's a zoomed in version, a plan of the thing. I think there are gates here, access gates. But this is going to be a semicircular paved area with benches, seating, bins, notice board, and then this feature archway, which has a map integrated within that structure itself. And obviously new planting, there's trees, and there's it'll be a sort of half enclosed with hedging, if you like. And then this is the path that's going to go and meander through the rest of the site. And this is just grassland and reeds and wildflower meadows and all that sort of stuff in terms of the planting areas and things like that. So yeah, that's the location of it. I think it is an existing access at the moment, but it's probably just a dirt track that people use. This is just enhancing that area.
Is it possible just to zoom out a little bit more so we can see exactly where that is in relation to the whole of the area, as it were?
Yep, I will try.
Sorry, Neil.
No, that's fine. Not a problem. I'm just trying to think what.
Yeah, it's showing us on that aerial photo, or.
Yeah, I'll see if I can enlarge this to zoom it in a bit. So it's basically in that top corner there.
Right. And can you just show us on that where the existing fisherman's car park is?
Yeah, it's in here.
Brilliant. That's most helpful. Thank you very much, Neil.
No problem.
Any other points of clarification? Right. Could I remind you that we've had an exercise prior to this where we as a committee and as a council submitted our thoughts on the original proposal. I don't know if anybody's had a look at those thoughts that we submitted, but presumably we should be making sure that all our points have been taken account of. Councillor Lee, have you got anything to say?
Yeah, I've had a quick look through it, but I think probably the one point we made, which perhaps hasn't been addressed by this, I think we were talking about enhancing the existing car park, whereas actually what's happened with this application is it's a bigger car park. So that's the thing which is most noticeable about it. In terms of everything else, it kind of aligns with what our thoughts, to be perfectly fair. Possibly the exception, and I could probably understand the reasoning why, is the use of an access route from the Warwick Road into the existing leisure centre car park. But I suspect that their budget and the time constraints they have for the spending of the money probably wouldn't afford them to be able to do anything with that, as long as that's safeguarded in the application, which it would have to look into detail into it. But those are the two things that strike me about this application and what we said in the original consultation.
Right. So we don't need any further clarification from Neil on our previous thoughts in relation to this. Thank you. Okay, councillors. Well, I think we have no speakers of any flavour. So we'll go straight into the debate on what we think about this application. Councillor Fradgley?
Thank you, Chair. I've got probably 4 points which I've picked up from that. One is what Councillor Lees just said. I'm a bit concerned that we actually said we would have preferred the car park not to have been enlarged. It is going to be enlarged, or it's proposed to be enlarged, and there is no, and originally I thought if it was to be enlarged, that would be overflow and would be used when that fisherman's car park was in heavy use, possibly in the summer. So I've got some concerns around there that I need to explore a bit more. I'm quite concerned that when it happens, if you go to any sort of wildlife park, people visiting it are kept to pathways, because we don't particularly want people moving from the mown pathways into the swards of wildflower, reeds, etc., and putting blankets down and playing cricket and whatever in those spaces. I think we need to make sure that where people go to will not damage what's going to happen here, because I think this is going to be a really sensitive and incredibly valuable site to sustainability in the area, as long as people aren't going to go trampling over it and trampling it all down. Because when you look at it, it's not that huge an area, and we are getting now, because it's becoming more publicised, a huge number of people visiting it. So I think there's a balance there. We talked before about the balance on the river, which isn't mentioned, but people will be visiting this not just from the car park, but they'll be coming up the river as well. I am concerned about the Bridgefoot site in front of the hotel, because the cycleway there doesn't seem to be a cycleway that people will, not all people will want to use. I think both of those pathways need to be considered to be shared space. Those are my initial thoughts.
Right. I can't see any other hands up. Thank you, Councillor Curtis.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I've got the 3 points really. The car park, picking up Councillor Fradgley's points about this, the leisure centre car park, as I understand, is underused at present. Now, and that's why I wanted a clarification from Neil on this new access or improved access from the leisure centre car park into this area, which is about halfway, not quite halfway, but it's fairly central in the whole area. So my question really is, if we've got capacity in the leisure centre car park and we've got a new access point into this green area, why do we really need to create extra car parking at the fisherman's car park? So that's one concern. My second, Neil said that these plans would increase the usable open space, and said that some isn't accessible. But isn't that the point to a degree, that if we want to keep a nature reserve, some of the land shouldn't be accessible? If we reduce, even in a small nature reserve like this, if we reduce the land for wildlife, whether it's flora or fauna, to ever smaller pockets, it will reduce the viability of any species. And there is plenty of room on the wreck for leisure activity. And my third concern is that I think if there is a cafe, whether it's mobile or permanent, inevitably, unfortunately, it's going to create litter, which will be a hazard to wildlife as well. So those would be my three remaining concerns. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair, and my apologies to the committee for being late. Between illness and homeschooling 2 children, it's got away with me today. The whole concept of this does concern me slightly, because I think it could very easily get out of hand. We, as a committee, as a council, requested the size of the car park. We requested what we prefer for the size of the car park, and to see that hasn't been actioned is actually very disappointing. We asked for that for a reason, because we don't feel like there's a need for the larger car park. With the access from the leisure centre, that should give enough spaces, I do believe. And I actually think this committee really ought to consider, we need to stick to our guns on this. If we are asking for something to be considered with reasons to why, then I actually think we need to stick by what we've requested and ask for it to be looked at again. Otherwise, we just, again, how many times do we find our opinions just ignored? If we are going to let people ignore them, then it's going to continue happening in planning. My second concern is what is to echo Councillor Curtis, what he said. The number of bins, the amount of rubbish that could be created down this area is of a great concern to me. We want a wildlife area, that's what we want. Yet we are actively encouraging people, and unfortunately, people mean litter. So I am concerned with that. It's great having cafes. It's great having, little spots where you can get a coffee and that. But are the bins going to be enough to cope with it? We've seen throughout lockdown complaints that bins are overflowing from disposable cups. I can just see this becoming a problem, especially during the summer months for this whole development. But yeah, with the car park, that is something I do believe that we ought to be sticking to what we've requested and ask for it to be looked at again. Has there been any explanation about why they haven't listened to our request over the car park? I don't believe there has. It's just been ignored. I think we ought to be sticking to what we asked for. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I think for me, there's things in here I like and things in here I don't like, which is what I'm thinking around. I mean, in terms of going from sort of north to south, I think the car park's the big issue for me. It'll be interesting to see, I think, again, without having gone for all the detailed information as to what impact they think will be had from having a larger number of cars visiting that. And again, it's what we originally requested in the consultation response is a remodeling of that car park, and to a certain extent that's already happens by the district. And I believe when we've had engagement from the town trust, they thought about, I didn't expect the car park to be as big as what's proposed in this application, even though it's beyond what we'd originally asked for. I think there was some degree of leeway. I think the way it was sort of told to us that it would be an overflow, but it looks more like a permanent feature now. Be interested to get Highways views on it, though. I also note the difficulty that's been taking place over summer with people parking on the Warwick Road, and so I'm slightly conflicted around that. I'd prefer people to be in a car park than on the Warwick Road, but the cones that are out seem to have been are relatively effective. I've not seen that same issue occur. Do I mind a toilet block being there? Not really. I don't think that's a problem. I'll assume that they've put the environmental enhancements have been thought through. It's nice to see some reed beds, some different environments put in there. Don't have an issue with that. I personally don't have an issue with access through those areas. I think it's good for people to be able to access them, and having defined walkways makes it less likely that people will go off into different areas. Very pleased that they're putting access in from the existing car park, and that I think, having looked at the plan, the sort of informal barbecue type areas are more off that car park than off of the car park, the Fisherman's car park. Pleased are enhancing the route into town. I think doing stuff around what they call the Bridgefoot Garden. Again, I always thought it was a bit of a wasted opportunity there. Is it the right design there? I think I'll take the point from Councillor Fradgley. Have we got the cyclists in mind on that? And could it be done in a more wilder way than perhaps the formalised way in which it's been drawn out in this plan? Yeah, not sure where to go with this one in terms of, would I object to it and seek a redesign or not? I think particularly with the car park and particularly with some of the other aspects, I think could be adjusted. But I appreciate what the Town Trust and the District Council have been listening and have, in the main, I think, delivered a more sustainable project than what they had initially proposed when the consultation first came out.
Thank you. I'd now like to call upon Mr. Mayor for his opinion, because it's also in his ward. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, obviously, I think we're all well aware of the many opinions that are around town on this project. Personally, there is no one that I've received any information from within my ward with reference to this project, other than referring to the parking issue, which has just been highlighted by Councillor Lee. I think obviously the car parking increase in size has always been a concern to everyone in Town Council. And I think the District Council and Town Trust and the people who are producing the plans here almost tried to offer a compromise by reducing it slightly, but not to the level that we were looking at, which is something maybe we still need to address with them. But from the concerns about accessibility, which had been mentioned in there and not making it accessible, I had the pleasure of attending an event in Leamington on Sunday with the Warwickshire Wildlife Trust, and looked at what they had in a particular walk that we went through along the River Lem. And I looked at that area and I thought, maybe this is what our project will look like in years to come. And the Warwickshire Wildlife Trust certainly are encouraging accessibility everywhere in these areas. They want people to enjoy these areas and to see the wildlife. And so I think, for me, I've done the walk here, and I think there are areas that need to be more accessible for everyone. So I think, you know, I understand that part of it, and hopefully we can all agree on that accessibility for the benefits of everyone in the community. But personally, for me, the biggest issue is the extension of the car park, which we raised in the initial concern.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Fradgley?
Having listened, having listened to what's been said, my concerns coming down really to kind of two bits. One is about the car park, and I do think we do need to raise that as an issue. How we do that, I'm not sure. Whether we do an objection, a holding objection, I'm not sure. That's something we need to decide. I do think we need to actually talk to highways as well as to how the main road is going to be managed. I mean, I have actually spoken to them about temporary measures for this summer, and they have actually talked about putting up signage. Now, whether that signage needs to be more permanent to actually tell people that there is lots of car parking available just a couple of 100 yards down the road from which they can access the park. I think that's got to be that's got to be more plainly explained in the plan, I think. And the other thing is the cycle issue. For me, that's quite a big one. I do think we need to sort out how cyclists are going to be able to access across that that green in front of the hotel. Neil, sorry, are there cycleways now in the park on the Lenches Meadow? Are cycleways being put there as well, or are they just going to be mown pathways for people to access?
I don't think there's any paved or rolled gravelled paths that's suitable for cycling. It looks like the surfacing material of the paths is more informal than that. Let me just double check that on one aspect. This trouble is there's so many colours on the plan, and therefore the key has so many different legends. That there are actually looking at the legend now. There's something, and under the hard landscaping key, there is a colour on the plan which does show. It's called coloured tarmac, e.g. natural text Cotswold. That sounds like it is sort of gravel rolled into a tarmac, so that it looks like a gravel path, but actually it's not loose gravel, so you know it's easier to maintain and things like that. If I can just share my screen again, I'll give you an example. If my interpretation is correct, then there are potentially quite significant areas of pathway that could be suitable for cycling. I'll just scan up here. So this path area here, you can see it's orange on my screen, T-junction there. You come down here. It's a narrower path. This is called a trim trail. So I would guess that is for parking. There's benches here, and that goes around the new ponds. And there's some artwork in here and another bench there. But this wider path here potentially could be suitable for cycling. But then when you get to this section here, according to the key, that's a boardwalk jetty decking, which leads down to the river. I would suggest that's probably not suitable for cycling. So, I mean, it's one of those things where if you've got a path and people are going to cycle anyway, even if they should or they shouldn't. But this is certainly creating more formal routes, if I can use that generic term, throughout the site. And I hear what councillors are saying in terms of this potential conflicting issue of you want to, what are they trying to achieve here? Are they trying to achieve an enhance a nature conservation area, or are they trying to achieve a recreational space which is attractive to people and therefore is going to be populated by walkers and people with dogs and things like that? And those two uses don't normally go hand in hand. And I think that's the point you're trying to make, isn't it? It's almost like, well, actually, what's your priority here? Is your priority nature conservation, or is your priority a leisure and recreational space? And Councillor Curtis made the point, we've got, we're very, very lucky in the town to have large formal recreational areas like the rec ground. And actually the policies in your plan, the ones I mentioned earlier, local wildlife site, River Avon biodiversity corridor, they're all about the nature conservation side of things. It is also a local green space, and local green space is not necessarily always formal recreation space. It can be informal areas of nature conservation. And I think that's why this was designated under that policy. And it may well be that maybe they've just overdone the accessibility and the recreational aspect of this and forgotten maybe what the real intention was, which is enhancing biodiversity, nature conservation, and things like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tricky one. I know why you're raising that as an issue.
That is my concern. I want accessibility for all in wheelchairs, etc., etc., etc. But I just think it has to be a controlled access, so that the balance between what we want as a wildlife area, quite distinct and quite different from the recreational area at the other side of the river. I'm not sure at the moment that balance is quite there.
Councillor Curtis?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Neil, I thought you summed that up really well. Thank you. And I completely agree with Councillor Fradgley here. I mean, I think there are plenty of open spaces of, if you like, recreational open spaces. There are very few places in or near the town where we've got a relatively natural environment. And I think my question really, there are 200 species of plants here, 2 nationally red listed bird species here. My question really, I suppose, is how do we best protect the natural environment, and is this the best solution? I think I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made. Thank you, Chair.
Right, does anybody else want to say anything? Councillor Fradgley?
Can I just say that I completely and utterly support the principle of this. I support the biodiversity of this. I support the accessibility of this. I want to get the balance between the accessibility and the wildlife right. I think the extra car park is a step too far. I don't mind the loo there because we're actually clearing up human feces as it is. I think a loo there is a good idea because people are going to use it. People are going to need facilities, but it's getting that balance right.
Councillor Alcock?
Yeah, I do agree there with Councillor Fradgley. It's something we can support in principle, but it just needs that little bit of tweaking in certain places to get this right. It's not just right for what we think as a council, it's right for the people who enjoy it, for accessibility, but also for the wildlife that we want to encourage. So this is where my planning knowledge maybe is slightly rusty, Chair. Is it possible to do the holding objection to ask for these little things to be tweaked, to be re-looked at, or what can we actually say with that?
Can we come to that in a minute, Councillor Alcock?
I told you I was rusty. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. Does anybody else wish to enter the debate? Okay. Do I have a proposal? Bear in mind what Councillor Alcock has just said. Councillor Fradgley?
I think that after the discussion, a holding objection while we have further discussion on the particular issues that we've just raised, which is the extension of the car park and the balance between wildlife and accessibility and the cycle lanes on the ground in front of the hotel. I think listening to it, those are the 3 issues that we just like further clarification on.
Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Alcock?
Thank you. Yes, I'll second.
Thank you. Right, could I take a vote on that, please? 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like it's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Have you been keying, Neil?
I have indeed, yes.
Would you like to reveal all?
Yeah, it's work in progress, so you have to bear with me because there's obviously a lot to pick up. Let me just finish typing this bit and then I'll share the screen and we can read it through together. Right, let's show you what I've got so far. Okay, so I've hit the object button. So this is effectively a holding objection. So I said the town council supports the principle of this exciting project. However, this proposal raises an important question of how nature conservation can be accommodated successfully alongside an accessible leisure and recreational use. The two do not normally go hand in hand. The site is designated as a local wildlife site, River Avon Biodiversity Corridor, and a local green space. These policies clearly seek to preserve and enhance nature conservation. However, the provision of a fully accessible open space will potentially conflict with this agenda. There needs to be careful consideration as to how the two can operate alongside each other, and a balance needs to be found. The need to extend the Fisherman's Car Park is questioned when the leisure centre car park is underused. A high concentration of people in this area, along with catering facilities, will cause noise and disturbance and litter, which again would conflict with the aims of nature conservation. The Bridgefoot Park is a great opportunity for enhancement, but this does not seem to have materialised in the scheme. It is unclear how cyclists will be accommodated through this park. Let me just see if I've missed anything else. I think that is the gist of what you're suggesting, isn't it? But I'm happy to take further suggestions, omissions, changes, etc.
Right. Can you drop that off now, Neil? Because I
Yep,
can't see
sorry.
the list. Okay, Councillor Curtis.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks very much, Neil. I think that's terrific. I just wondered where you said, I hope I've got this right, a balance needs to be found between whether to say an improved balance needs to be found or something like that. I don't know if anybody else would agree with that.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. That's probably clearer in terms of what I was trying to suggest. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, should we comment on that? No, we did ask for the car park to be looked at previously. That our ideas that we put forward as the town council was to have the car park size looked at, just to not so much as remind them, but just to strengthen our statute as where we stand, really. I don't know if that's possible. Yeah, I don't know what the exact wording was on the original thought. Maybe Councillor Lee or Chair could possibly help with that. But I'm just wondering whether it needs mentioning.
Yeah, I think they're aware that of what we've asked for in the past, and what we're doing now is repeating. Councillor Lee.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, generally supportive of what you put there, Neil. I think what we may want to add really is, I think, a lot of this car park probably aside, it's a lot of it comes down to detail. I mean, for me, the principle I've got no problem with. Do I like the detail in it? Not necessarily. And do we want to be proactive as a town council and offer our views as to how it could be improved in order for us to remove our objection? We've kind of lacked that dialogue, to be perfectly honest, in the actual design. I think we've had input in terms of the original consultation. I appreciate the town trust did come to see us with the outcome of that consultation and give us the sort of broad brush sort of view as to how they were going to change the approach to what they were doing. What this lacks, for me, this detail is not something is something I'd object to, when we have objected to it. But is there a means to have an improvement to a design, and could the town council have some say in that? I think that's probably what we should be putting forward.
I personally think that obviously if we have put in an objection, they've got to take account of that. Things that we have done in the past, we've had a meeting to discuss these things, not a formal meeting in the council chamber, but round a table in the committee room. And we do that with developers anyway, and I don't see any reason why, if we wish, we could request such a thing. What have we got now, Neil?
Right, I've made a couple of additions. I'll share the screen again. So where are we? So the provision of so an improved balance needs to be made. So that's the point that Councillor Curtis picked up on. Happy to put that in. I've added in this bracket here. So the need to extend the Fisherman's car park is questioned when the leisure centre car park is underused. Brackets. This has been raised previously by the town council, just to make that point again. And I've added the following paragraph at the end, which sort of summarises it with: the town council therefore raises a holding objection to the proposal and would welcome further discussions, meetings with the district council town trust, where our design ideas for the project can be communicated. And that leaves the door open for them to come back and invite us for a round table or a Zoom table or whatever you call it, and have a chat about where we can, you know, listen to the reasons why they've come up with the scheme they have, or make some suggestions, alterations, things like that.
Yeah. Right, can you take that off so I can see everybody, Neil?
Sorry, Chair.
Okay. Is everybody happy with that now? Yeah, good. I think that's fine. Press the button, Neil.
Okie dokie. Going, gone. That has been submitted, Chair.
Thank you, Neil. If you wish, Neil, you can go now. You're not in Auckland or wherever.
I shall bow out at this point and wish you all a good evening. Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation, Neil.
No worries. Cheers, everyone. Bye bye.
Okay. Gosh, now where are we? Item 8.2, to note the action by the town clerk with regard to the chairman's actions, etc. At chairman's actions, it was attended by Councillor Dowling and myself, and at additional chairman's actions, it was attended by Mr. Mayor and myself. Okay, do I have your agreement to the action taken at those meetings? Okay, thank you. We have no street trading or licensing applications. So item 8.4, notice of decision. I've had a look at this. We're very much in line with the district council on the decisions. Most of our no reps turned out to be granted. We went no reps on a couple where they were refused by SDC, and that was number 2 to 3 Gill Street and 12 Broad Walk. Another one was 28 Jolliffe Road, where we placed a holding objection, and it was withdrawn. So obviously somebody has taken account of our holding objection and will probably come back, hopefully, with whatever it was that we mentioned in our objection. And the last one was one which is Burnside, which we objected to, has now been granted because it won an appeal. So we had no choice but to remove our objection. Okay. Item 9, Chairman's verbal report. I haven't got anything to say. Item 10, request for alteration. I will have already mentioned one, which is Burnside, and the other one was Bishopton House. I don't know whether you recall Bishopton House. It was an interesting application which we objected to, and we in the end, we removed our objection subject to certain conditions taking place. Okay. Item 11, to register at planning, SCC planning. On the 21st of July, there is nothing for Stratford on that list, which was published today. And as yet, we don't know what's going to be on the 4th of August. Okay. Item 12, to appoint substitutes for the next chairman's actions on the 28th of July. Mr. Mayor, thank you. So the date of the next meeting is Tuesday, the 3rd of August at 6 p.m. and I'm closing the meeting at 19:02. Thank you. You can go now, Victoria. I'd better stop the recording. I've no doubt that session has been